The Buddha once asked a student carrying a heavy stone, "How long will you hold that?" The student said, "Until I reach the other side." The Buddha smiled and said nothing more. Why stay silent? Because the student hadn't yet noticed. He'd already arrived. That small moment holds the secret to why gratitude feels impossible when we're gripping the past with both hands. Today, I'll tell you what the Buddha saw in that student, and what he might see in you. On the eastern edge of Jeddah Grove, outside the city of Sravasti, the trees swayed gently in the evening breeze. The sun was sinking low, casting long orange shadows across the ground. The disciples sat scattered here and there, each lost in quiet thought. Then one of them slowly rose and walked toward the Buddha. This man had been carrying the question, many questions really, for a long time. They had been building inside him day after day until they sat on his chest like a stone. The evening air was warm and faintly dusty. A bird called out somewhere in the distance, then fell silent. He stopped a few feet from where the Buddha sat, his hands folded, his eyes cast downward, unsure now whether the words he had rehearsed 100 times would come. Like a traveler who has walked all day toward a mountain, only to find upon arriving that he has forgotten why he came. He stood there breathing slowly, the question dissolving on his tongue like salt. The Buddha did not look up, but simply said, "Sit." And in that single word, half the stone lifted from the man's chest. He sat down on the dry grass, and for a long moment neither of them spoke. A lamp was being lit somewhere behind them in the grove, and its small flame threw a trembling circle of light across the roots of a nearby tree. The man realized, without quite knowing how, that the question he had carried so far and so long had not disappeared, only softened, the way a clenched fist softens when it is finally allowed to rest, open, in the lap. His name was Malunkyaputta. He was a sharp and intelligent disciple, but his intelligence had filled his mind with questions he couldn't silence. Is the universe eternal, or does it have an end? Where does a person go after death? Is the soul the same as the body, or something apart from it? Is there a boundary to the cosmos? If the Buddha would not answer these things, Malunkyaputta had decided he saw no reason to continue his training. He sat down before the Buddha and spoke plainly. "Blessed One, I have been asking these questions for so long. Is the world eternal? Where do we go when we die? Is the soul one with the body or separate? If you will not answer me, I will leave." The Buddha looked at him quietly for a moment, not with anger, not with reassurance, simply with steady, open eyes. Then he spoke. "Malunkyaputta, tell me, when you first came to train with me, did I ever say, 'Answer all your questions first, and then I will teach you'?" Malunkyaputta went still. No, he had never said that. He knew it. The Buddha continued, "Suppose a man is struck by a poisoned arrow. His companions rush to find a doctor, but the man says, 'Wait. First I must know, who shot this arrow? What was his name? Where was he born? How tall was he? What was the arrow made of? What wood was the bow? What was the bowstring? Until I know all of this, I will not let the arrow be removed." The Buddha let each word settle before the next. Malunkyaputta, that man would die. The poison would spread through his body long before any answer came. Silence. Whether the universe is eternal or not, a person still grows old, still falls ill, still dies, and it is precisely because of this that the question matters. How do we live with this pain, right now? That is what I teach. The questions that had crowded his mind for so long began to thin, like mist beginning to lift. Then, Blessed One, what is it that you do teach? That suffering exists, that suffering has a cause, and that how we see this present moment has the power to change the shape of our suffering. The wind moved through the trees again. Malunkyaputta sat where he was for a long while. The questions hadn't disappeared, but for the first time, it felt entirely natural to sit here, carrying them and still being here. He did not need them answered. He needed to stop bleeding. He reached up, slowly, and touched the place on his chest where the tightness had lived for so long. It was still there, but something had shifted. the way a stone shifts underfoot on a path you have walked 100 times, and suddenly you notice the ground. He stayed through the evening. He stayed through the night. When morning came, he was still seated. Not because he had found what he was looking for, but because somewhere in the darkness, he had stopped looking. This parable of the poisoned arrow is one of the sharpest teachings the Buddha ever gave. The important thing is this: he was not saying give up on your questions. He was saying you do not need to answer every question before you can begin. Look first at the arrow that is already in you. See what it is doing to you right now. That comes first. Let's bring this to the subject of gratitude. Sometimes we think, if I can't feel grateful, something must be wrong with me. Or we feel a kind of urgency. I need to be more grateful or I'll never be happy. And that urgency itself becomes a source of pain. Here's how the cycle works. The suffering doesn't come from the inability to feel grateful. It comes from holding a fixed image in your mind, the image of a grateful version of me, and then feeling the gap between that image and who you actually are today. The pain isn't born from what's missing. It's born from the rigid frame of how I should be. To borrow the Buddha's words, the person who can't feel grateful and then spends all their time asking, why can't I feel grateful? What's wrong with my heart? That person is pulling out the arrow's name and origin before they've even looked at the wound. Look at the arrow first. Just notice what is actually pressing against your chest right now. Only that. And there's one more question worth holding. Who exactly is the self who feels grateful? In Buddhist thought, the self is not a fixed solid thing. What we call I is a temporary gathering. Body, sensation, memory, intention, awareness, all of it momentarily overlapping to take the shape we call me. The me who felt grateful yesterday and the me who cannot feel grateful today look like the same person, but the conditions are different. Are you tired? Did you sleep? Did you speak with someone? Countless causes and conditions have come together to make today's version of you. When you think, I'm pathetic for not being grateful, is that pathetic self truly a fixed, unchanging reality? Maybe not. Today's conditions are simply producing today's experience. Change the conditions, and the view shifts. This isn't wishful thinking. It's just how things are. Gratitude isn't a measure of your character. It rises naturally from the conditions of this particular moment. Nothing more, nothing less. And here is something a farmer knows. Even if they've never heard the word impermanence, you don't scold the soil for not flowering in February. You look at the season. You look at what the ground has been given, and you work from there. The flower was never the problem. Neither were you. Perhaps what we call the practice of gratitude is less about forcing a feeling, and more about quietly tending the conditions, the rest, the stillness, the small honest kindness toward yourself, until something can grow again on its own. A seed does not strain to become a sprout. It simply receives what it receives, water when it comes, light when it comes, and the opening happens without effort or apology. So tonight, if gratitude does not rise in you, do not reach for it. Just notice what is here, the weight of your hands in your lap, the sound of the room, the simple fact that you are still breathing. That noticing, quiet, unhurried, without demand, is already a kind of tending. And sometimes in that quiet noticing, something unexpected loosens. Not gratitude exactly, not yet, but perhaps the faintest easing of the grip you didn't realize you were holding. A woman once told me she sat down simply to notice her own breathing, expecting nothing, and found herself without planning it, thinking of her mother's hands. But she wept, and afterwards she said she felt cleaner. She hadn't summoned anything. She had only stopped pushing the river. This teaching lands softly in the middle of our ordinary lives. Think of someone living a packed, exhausting day. Back-to-back meetings from morning, a crying child waiting at the door when they get home, dinner to make in a hurry, and then suddenly it's past midnight. In the middle of days like these, they decided to try keeping a gratitude journal, but stopped after 3 days. I knew I couldn't keep anything up, they told themselves, and tucked the notebook into the back of a drawer. If this sounds familiar, recall the Buddha's words. What is the arrow that's actually in you? It isn't that you stopped. It's the verdict your mind handed down. I'm the kind of person who can't stick with things. That judgment is a second arrow, and it lands in the same wound. The real gift of a gratitude journal may not be accumulating more gratitude. It may be something quieter. The simple act of pausing at the end of the day and asking, what happened today? That pause itself, that small return to the present moment, is its own kind of practice. Or consider someone hurting in a relationship. That person doesn't value me. The feeling sits heavy and constant. But look a little closer. Is the pain coming from what that person did, or from the gap between what you expected and what actually happened? Somewhere along the way, a belief formed. I deserve to be treated this way. It came from parents, from society, from years of experience, layers of conditions that built the frame. And now when reality doesn't fit the frame, it hurts. The frame feels like protection, but it may also be what's holding you in place. Or think of someone caring for an aging parent, exhausted every single day. Some days there's no room for gratitude, only anger, only grief. And then on top of that comes the thought, I should be grateful. But here's another way to see it. The fact that anger rises means you are still fully present in this. The fact that you are worn down means you have been giving so much. The opposite of gratitude may not be anger, it may be indifference. Seen this way, even the weight of today can look a little different. And sometimes, in the thick of that exhaustion, a small thing breaks through. The way your parent's hand feels familiar in yours, or the particular angle of late afternoon light falling across the bed. You didn't search for it. You didn't write it down. It simply arrived, and for a moment the weight lifted just enough to breathe. That moment, unbidden, unrecorded, may be the truest form of gratitude there is. Not something practiced, but something received, like rain that falls whether or not we remembered to bring a cup. Not because the cup was ready, but because we were standing in the open. There is a monk's story of a student who came to him frustrated, insisting he could not meditate. His mind was too busy, too loud. The monk handed him a cup of tea and said nothing until it was finished. You just did, he said quietly. The student had not been counting breaths or holding any posture. He had only for a few minutes been completely with the tea. So here is one small thing you can try starting today. Among the practices the Buddha encouraged in his disciples, there was one called simply, observe today. At the end of the day, close your eyes and slowly let the day come back to you. Not to search for what was good, just to watch what happened. If you'd like to try a gratitude journal, here is one gentle form it could take. Before you get into bed at night, open a notebook. Write down just one thing, what I felt today. It doesn't have to be gratitude. Anger is fine. Sadness is fine. The train was crowded works. The coffee was warm works. Something that person said stayed with me works. Just one thing from today, written down. The most important part is this, don't evaluate it. Before you decide whether it was good or bad, just write it. When you do this, the part of your mind that was quietly running its judgment machine all day gets a little quieter. I won't promise that keeping this habit will make you feel more grateful. I can't say your heart will grow calmer just because you do it every day. But pausing once a day to observe what today held, that small practice has a way of gradually shifting how you see things. That is Buddhism's modest answer. The Buddha never answered the questions Malankya-Pruta came with. He simply said, look at the arrow that is in you right now. A gratitude journal is the same. It isn't about finding happiness somewhere far away. It's about looking at what was actually here, today. That's all. Over time, you may notice something quiet happening. Not a dramatic change, but something like the difference between walking through a room in the dark and walking through it with a small candle. The room is the same room, but you begin to see where the furniture is. And one morning, perhaps months from now, you may write down something ordinary. The light came through the window differently today. And pause, and realize you have written that same thing before, in different words, many times. And that moment of recognition, that small, unhurried noticing, is not the beginning of the practice. It is the practice having quietly done its work. Let me leave you with just one question. When did you last quietly think to yourself, well, that was something, about something small? It doesn't have to be a big feeling. It doesn't have to move you. Just a moment when something was here and you noticed it. Do you remember a moment like that today? There's no rush to answer. Maybe it was the sound of a door closing somewhere down the hall, and for just a second you heard it, really heard it, before the mind moved on. Maybe it was the weight of a cup in your hand, or the way the light fell across the floor this morning, before you thought to call it morning. These moments are not rare. They are happening constantly, like fish rising briefly to the surface of a still pond, before slipping back down into the dark water. The question is only whether we were looking when they came, and sometimes without trying we are. We explored what the Buddha teaches for the moments when gratitude feels completely out of reach. A previous episode that may quietly deepen what you've just received today. You'll find the link waiting in the description below. Let me bring the man with the poisoned arrow back to mind just once more. What he needed wasn't the name of the person who shot him. He needed to look at what was lodged in his body right now. Gratitude may work the same way. The harder you tell yourself, I need to become someone who feels grateful, the further gratitude drifts. The more you decide, I'm terrible for not feeling it, the less you can see what's already in front of you. Maybe gratitude isn't something you hunt down and find. Maybe it's something you notice, quietly, almost by accident, when you simply look at what today brought. If there was even one small thing in your day today, something you barely registered at the time, that's enough. I genuinely believe that. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, and if you find yourself thinking, but I can't think of anything, that's fine too. Just notice that you're breathing. Notice that you read these words, and something in you kept listening. That alone is something. A monk I once knew used to say that even a person sitting in a dark room, unable to feel anything at all, is still being held up by the floor beneath them. He meant it simply, without decoration. The floor doesn't ask whether you deserve to be held. Whose face came to mind while you were listening today? One story a day. In a week your words will change. In a month your eyes will change. In a year the same world will look completely different.